Hello and welcome to the SCI GUYS, the show where we talk about the crazy, weird and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Corey, and as always I'm joined by my co-host, the lackadaisical Luke Cutforth.
They just keep getting better.
This week we're talking about aimed aggression.
Aimed at who?
Aimed at you.
Oh no!
You suck.
Please,
Ha-ha!
please.
But first, before we get into that, we have to list out some Spotify stats. So we have some followers on Spotify.
Ooh, drum roll.
Have over 1.5 million starts, which we know about, 1.2 million streams, which we know about, over 82,000 listeners, 82,603, and 45,731 followers.
We're so close to 50k.
So close to 50k.
Wow.
So if everyone tells a friend, and that friend tells a friend, and those friends tell a friend, we might just hit 50k. Maybe.
Go and tell your friends. I want you to call them immediately.
And we've also got a question for you. So if you're listening, get down to the YouTube comments. If you're watching, you're probably already in the YouTube comments. If you're, I don't know, experiencing this some other way, get to YouTube, get into the comments, and answer this question. The question is, have you ever been bullied?
Yes.
Right now. A lot of workplace bullying going on between us two. Yeah, no, we've both been bullied then, haven't we?
Yeah.
Not by each other, but as children in school. And we could talk about that a bit today. So bullying. I kind of want to talk about, the science of bullying, some of the psychology of bullying, because it's kind of an interesting topic. And really as well, I more wanted to talk about this on After Dark. So I thought we could build some foundations here and then do an After Dark episode on the same topic, right? So After Dark, if you don't know, it's our sister show to SCI GUYS, where, after SCI GUYS has ended, Luke and I will still have some conversations. So we pop that up on our Patreon for the lovely patrons to listen to at their leisure. So if you want to hear some more SCI GUYS-esque conversations with a little less science, a little bit more philosophy, politics, and woo-woo thinking, as Luke puts it, head over to patreon.com/SCI GUYS and listen to some After Dark.
Do it now.
So, first off, my question to you is, Luke, what is bullying?
I would say that it is behavior of one or a group of people targeted at one or another group of people, designed to make them feel pretty rubbish about themselves for some reason. God, I'm good with my definitions, aren't I?
You're not far off, actually. Bullying, I said aggression at the beginning, aimed aggression, and that's kind of a little hint there. Bullying is targeted, right? One of the key points of bullying is that it isn't just a random meanness. Someone isn't bullying you if they say a mean thing to you, or if they say a mean thing to everyone. If someone picks you as a target and consistently decides to make you feel bad, that is bullying. So there is no legal definition of bullying in the UK, but it's usually defined as, and I'm just going to read this verbatim, repeated, intended to hurt someone either physically or emotionally, often aimed at certain groups, for example, because of race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. And it can take any number of forms, physical assault, teasing, making threats, name-calling. Even cyberbullying is something that kind of blew up, I guess, just as we kind of were getting into high school, right? Cyberbullying only, I remember, really became a concept towards the tail end of my school years.
Yeah, as there were significantly more ways of interacting with other people online, because before it was just the news.
Yeah,
you didn't really submit stuff
exactly
like bullying.
Before social media, you couldn't really. There wasn't really an avenue to bully people other than, I guess, forums or whatever, and you kind of probably get kicked off of that because there's not much private messaging in forums, and if there is, you can easily kind of get rid of someone.
Yeah.
Cyberbullying, we can maybe do an entire episode on that itself because it's kind of its own beast in some ways, obviously it is still bullying, but that aspect of it being via the internet and so, in a sense, inescapable is really interesting.
Yeah, so the idea that it enters your house.
Yeah.
And also the idea that we have not evolved to deal with being online. Yeah. And so it can be even more horrible because even the bully with whatever tiny bit of empathy they have left, if they have some in the first place, doesn't have any of the social cues that are going you're taking this too far, if indeed they are paying attention to those cues.
No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit more about bullying. As I said, it's aggression. So it says here that children who bully deliberately hurt others, right? Now, a lot of bullying conversations seem to be about children. And that makes sense, right, to some extent, because children are less developed than adults. They're more likely to be impulsive and they can be more hurtful towards others without really feeling as bad about it. And also, generally, and when I say they can hurt others without feeling as bad about it, as in there are fewer consequences. The consequences aren't as large, and also kids can be dumb sometimes as well and not understand the full extent of their actions.
But it's also kind of mad. I was thinking about this recently about the fact that in childhood, you basically like a lot of kids like do behaviors which if you did them as an adult, there would be like serious consequences. Like they beat each other up.
Yeah.
They like bite each other.
Yeah.
They like really bully each other. And that's just sort of normal when you're a kid. And the stakes seem low because the people are so tiny.
Yeah.
But when you're the tiny person, it doesn't feel like the stakes are low. It feels like the stakes are very high. So kind of crazy.
It is crazy. But what I find interesting is that bullying isn't just something that happens amongst children. No. Bullying in the workplace is definitely a thing.
Our Deputy Prime Minister is currently under investigation for bullying. If that isn't a damning assessment of our government, I don't know what is. He's got like loads and loads of claims against him for bullying, and he's the second most powerful person in the country.
And didn't like Priti Patel also have...
She had a bunch of bullying claims against her, yeah.
She looks like a bully, though.
She seems like a bully. She's Umbridge.
Yeah, that's not really the point of this episode. Anyway, let's get back into bullying. I just want to highlight that bullying isn't just something that happens amongst children. Obviously, it's something that we talk about a lot amongst children. We'll get into sort of the specifics of the stats in a sec. But just to give you the definition from the US, in 2014, the CDC and the Department of Education, they actually released a federal definition of bullying. So there's 3 core elements to that: unwanted aggressive behavior, observed or perceived power imbalance, and repetition or high likelihood of repetition of bullying behaviors. So that would be the legal definition of bullying in the US. Now, again, what I find really interesting is that this is really focused on schools. And of course it is, because kids are more likely to bully each other in school. It's easier to do worse things, and also developmentally speaking, like small things that happen to you as a child can have large impacts down the line. Same thing can happen with adults, of course, but you're probably a little bit more resilient once you've grown up and are more sort of, I guess, in control of your emotions and able to soothe yourself and deal with problems and things like that. But statistics. So about 20% of students from the ages of 12 to 18 will be bullied nationwide. So if they're bullied, it says here, students aged 12 to 18 who reported being bullied said that they thought those who bullied them had the ability to influence other students' perception of them. That was 56% of them. 50% of them said that the bully had more social influence. 40% said that the bully was physically stronger or larger. And 31% said that the bully had more money. Now, this is quite interesting. So you're seeing here, there's a power imbalance there. So bullies seem to be targeting people that they are able to target. Weaker people, right?
Yeah.
We'll get into the development of that in a second. But in schools, 19% of students in grades 9 through 12, so in the US, report being bullied on school property in the 12 months prior to the survey that this information comes from. So there are different places that bullying can happen in the school. I'm just going to read some of these out. So 43% were in the hallway or stairwell, 42% were in the classroom, the cafeteria was 26.8%, outside on school grounds was 21.9%, online or on text was 15%, bathroom or locker room was 12.1%, somewhere else in the school building was 2.1%, and apparently approximately 46% of students aged 12 to 18 who were bullied during the school year notified an adult at school about the bullying. Now, what I find interesting here is that the classroom and the hallway and stairwell were had the highest percentage there. Both of those are places where the hallway or stairwell, there's probably less supervision, but there's still going to be some, there's still going to be lots of people around, there's people being able to watch. The classroom is full of students and also has teachers in. There's supervision there. So are we really trying to solve the bullying problem?
I don't know. It's really interesting. I think often teachers might not spot it sometimes, because especially when you said real or perceived power imbalance. Now, I don't know what it's like to be a teacher. I think teachers probably are fairly aware of, for example, like the social hierarchy of the classroom to a certain extent. Who's the cool kid? Who's the not cool kid? Obviously, there's like who's the taller or bigger children. That's obvious. So they can tell that's going on.
Yeah.
And they might know who's the rich kids and who's the not rich kids, probably. That they might be able to pick up on that. But especially in my experience of bullying, like in classrooms, like I definitely think that teachers it never felt to the teacher anywhere near as like impactful as it felt like being on the receiving end. And that's obviously because I'm living in my world with my not yet fully formed prefrontal cortex, and I'm living in my little child narrative where everything's really, really big, and then for adults it's like, oh, these kids are being stupid.
Yeah, exactly. And also they've got 29 other kids to look at, to pay attention to and make sure that they're all right. And I think it's really difficult as well because, when you're bullied, you're told, tell a trusted adult. When I was bullied in primary school, I told a trusted adult and nobody did anything about it. I'm not even, the school did nothing. My teacher, her name was Mrs. Bathgate, and she was essentially like my Miss Honey, right? From Matilda. If you were to picture the kind of teacher that she is, that's who she was. She was pulled me out in front of the class and said, hey guys, Corey's reading, I was 7 years old, Corey's reading Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Look how big this book is. And there's no pictures in it. Well done. Good job, him. And she encouraged my reading in an embarrassing way,
nice.
But it was like things like that, right? She really took it upon herself to make sure that I wasn't being bullied. And I was being bullied by high school students at one point. I was 7 years old and they had a ring and they shoved me around. I think one of them had boxing gloves.
What losers?
I know, right?
What are these losers doing with their life? Especially when you if a necessary part of being a bully is that there's a power imbalance or a perceived power imbalance. What flipping losers going around beating up or teasing people they think are weaker than them?
Exactly.
It's so weird. Just get a flipping life.
Yeah, so there's 12-year-olds going for a 7-8-year-old. It's a bit funny. It's a bit funny. But that happened and the school didn't really do anything, the management of the school. It took my family really getting involved. My uncle came to pick me up from school once and, the kids that were going to bully me saw my uncle and were like, oh, we're sorry. We didn't realize he was your nephew. We'll leave him alone now. That's it.
Yeah.
The thing is that bullying isn't necessarily an easy thing to solve, but also I don't think as adults we necessarily take as much care around bullying as we could or should. And part of that as well is probably that adults are perfectly comfortable bullying people as well. Not all adults.
Not all adults, but yes.
Adults are certainly capable of and perfectly comfortable bullying people. I mean, it's just probably less likely to be called bullying when you're an adult, right? Like if you're being targeted at work by your boss, you're not necessarily going to say that your boss is bullying you, but if it's aggressive behavior and it's consistent and there is a power imbalance, then you're being bullied by your boss.
There's also a really big problem in terms of so one of the plot points in my movie, Arthur Braxton, is
The Drowning of Arthur
Braxton available on Prime Video.
Oh, you've got a movie, The Drowning of Arthur. It's on Prime Video, right? I watched it the other day.
Yeah, go on. Watch it 5 more times.
I just skipped to my name in the credits and that's it.
Yeah, you skip to you where you're doing. So if you listen now carefully, Corey. So, oh God, okay, I'll talk about this because it's so funny. So one of the things you get to do is that you get if you've got any TVs on, you get to design all this random TV content. And so I sat down with various friends and said, let's just do a bunch of parodies of TV shows. And one of those was I went with my laptop to Corey's room when we lived together, and I went, let's make Come Dine With Me, in which Corey plays everyone in Come Dine With Me. So Corey is commentating his own Come Dine With Me recipe in 2 different voices.
Yeah.
It's just, chef's kiss.
The funniest thing to me as well is that this is playing during a scene that is incredibly depressing. You've got I'm looking at the screen and Darby is looking really sad because his dad's an alcoholic, and then it's just me on the TV going
what, do you go
Corey's comfort conchi.
I think I might do a nice sweet mushroom or something like that. And that scene is actually specifically relevant to what I'm talking about, is that there's when you're writing a film, even if you're adapting from a book, you add stuff, and I added a specific detail from my own life, which is that when I finally reported being bullied to my school, they basically weren't able to do anything because some of the bullying, or the most egregious parts of the bullying, didn't happen on school property.
Exactly, that's my issue as well.
And the trouble is that the police are not wanting or avoiding as much as possible getting minors involved in the criminal justice system, so they're not going to do anything. with some specific exceptions to that, of course.
Yeah.
Go watch our prisons episode.
I guess as a victim, I was just the wrong colour. Swap it around and oh boy.
Yeah, and then schools actually literally can't do anything if it doesn't happen on school property. And I also had, when I finally told a person at school, the person who was bullying me's mum also then got really annoyed with me because I got her son in trouble.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Your son's a dick. God.
This is the thing. Bullying is such a problem, and we're just not really, I say, equipped to solve it. We can solve it to some extent. We can make it less, I guess, traumatic for children. But we're like all of these little barriers in place that you're mentioning. You know, like the police don't want to do this, and the school can't do anything if it's not on school grounds. So if we really want to solve bullying, we know what the problems here are, right? But we're just not really done anything to solve it. No amount of school programs where it says, don't bully, is going to stop a bully from bullying. A bully isn't bullying kids just because they don't know that bullying is wrong.
No.
We'll get into why we bully. In fact, do you know what? Why don't we get into why we bully right bloody now? So why do you think we bully? Not you and I, you and me rather. Why do you think humans as a species exhibit bullying?
Well, there'll be loads of reasons. My mum always told me it was jealousy. She thought that everyone was jealous of me because I'm just wonderful, and so that's why.
I think that's the worst thing to tell a kid. I mean,
really?
in some cases it's true, right? The abuse that I get online comes in some cases from apparent jealousy or a feeling of inadequacy, and trying to bring someone down because you feel you feel like you want to get them down to your level.
Yes. Sure.
But I was a dorky little kid that wore glasses and didn't socialize all that good and was really into Pokemon.
Yeah.
I don't think the bullies were jealous of me.
Yeah, no. In my specific situation, it kind of probably was true in that the two people who did most of the bullying of me had particular things that were missing in their lives, and that was probably very hard for those people, right? And so that's another reason why you bully is stuff's going on in your life and you're taking it out on the world, and you're if you're having a hard time, you might be less able to regulate your emotions, but there'll also be some other reasons.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to say that jealousy isn't a reason for bullying, or for people picking targets, or whatever, or for certain ways that people are bullied. Jealousy can absolutely come into it, or feelings of inadequacy in oneself. What I mean to say is that I don't know if telling a kid they're just jealous of you is the best way forward, because look, I mean, I was smart in school and I did well in school, but I don't know if telling a kid like, hey, you're smart and they're just jealous of that is helpful in any way. It's like, oh, well, why can't we do something about that, huh? Why can't we solve this? It's a really, I think, unsatisfying sort of conclusion to it. They're just jealous of you. That's why they're treating you terribly. So you're being treated terribly because you have nice things, and don't let it get to you. That's what they say as well. Like, oh, just don't show them that they're bothering you.
But I think that the point is more to do with like a lot of the time, especially if the bullying is emotional bullying rather than just physical bullying. The bully is trying to convince you that certain things about you are true.
Yeah.
And so and if you're sort of offering an alternative explanation to the child that's not, oh, you actually are like dreadful in these specific ways that you're being told are dreadful. They are just saying those things because it's sort of the sort of roundabout way of saying it's about them. It's really about them. It's not really about you. And it feels like it's about you, and they're saying things about you, but it's really about them inside.
I get that. I just mean from the perspective of a child, that I don't know how much that helps, right? Because a child of say like 7, 8 years old isn't necessarily going to understand that, be able to follow through from that as in, oh, they're doing it because they're upset, because that's not really how a child thinks. Like, oh, why are they doing it? Because I'm terrible. It's like, I'm experiencing this bad thing and that's really difficult and hard, and you feel worthless almost because of the thing itself. And being told, they're just jealous of you, I don't think that's quite enough. I think maybe sitting down with a kid and being like, they're jealous of you, here is why. If this is what they're doing or saying to make you feel small, it's because this is going on in their lives, right? Like and it sucks that they're hurting you like that, and they shouldn't be hurting you like that. but this is why they are doing it, not because you are bad, but because they're bad. Like, that's fine. The full explanation. I just mean, like, as in the line that kids get given, oh, they're just jealous of you. Like, I've heard that so many times in my life, and it's like, right, but at what point, like, I'm jealous of them. At what point, like, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like,
you're going to start beating people up?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so why, you know what I mean? Because it's not just that they're jealous of you, right?
Right.
There's more to it than that. We'll get into it in just a sec. So, essentially, it says here that people bully because it can be an effective way of getting what you want, right? So, short term speaking. Now, it can often come down to, like, issues with social skills. So, like, you know, if you're a kid, say for example, you have needs, right? Now, you might not necessarily be able to understand your own needs, and you might not necessarily be able to express your needs, even if you do actually understand them. And so then getting what you want can be difficult. Babies cry to get what they want because they can't communicate with language and express their needs or necessarily even understand their needs. They just know, need thing. Ah. And you can teach a kid baby sign, and, you know, babies will understand what their needs are and express them to you. And that's a really good way of doing that. But still, as kids grow up, there are big feelings that they have. And if a kid is going through, like, a really traumatic experience, or has got a life that is difficult in some ways, or is going through something, they might not be able to understand what it is that they're feeling or what they need to alleviate those feelings. And it literally says here, bullying is also a way of establishing social dominance, although over time, as children's behavioural repertoires generally broaden, it becomes increasingly an increasingly dysfunctional way. So, you know, it's not just a case of trying to get what you want, whether it's like you've got troubles at home, or, you know, you're yourself being bullied by or abused by a parent or other family member, right? There's also the aspect of sort of social dominance, but they're kind of tied together, right? Because the social dominance is like someone's pushing you down. Okay, well, I need to be on top, or someone doesn't even need to be pushing you down. You could just feel in yourself inadequate in some way.
Feel
and
that
need
you
to push
are at the
others
bottom.
down.
Yeah.
You know, the question is here, it says sort of, are bullies born or made? And I think the answer is quite obvious, right?
Oh, they're definitely born. Yeah, they're born.
Luke.
Mr. and Mrs. Cutforth, you've got a wonderful baby bully. He's so beautiful. But don't let him outside. They are made, obviously.
Yeah, so it says here, if normal aggression of 2-year-olds isn't handled with consistency, children fail to acquire internal restraints against such behaviour. So essentially, you can think of bullying as a maladaptive sort of coping mechanism for an internal inability to, I guess, regulate emotions. Yeah, it comes from a problem. Like, it generally can come from a problem of emotional regulation. You know, and or not necessarily a lack of empathy, but you're sort of superseding the empathy signals by. Yeah,
you're feeling so much that the empathy is like, it's like if you're hungry and you're like cold.
Yeah.
You know, look, like the higher human functions of like painting, or like writing a piece of music, or even looking after other people are superseded by I'm hungry and cold. Something else kicks in. I guess, is that what you're saying? Like the empathy signal is low compared to all these horrible emotions this person's feeling.
Yeah, and sort of how you develop really can ingrain something in you, right? So if we think of bullying less as a thing that children do to each other, or a thing that people do to each other, and try to think of it more as a sort of outcome of poor internal sort of, let's say, emotional regulation or emotional intelligence, things like that, it starts to make a bit more sense, right? Because you look at a kid and you're like, why are you bullying someone? And that's not really a great question to ask, because kid doesn't know why they're bullying someone. This is what they do because this is what gets them what they need.
This is what is happening.
Like fundamentally, when it comes to children, if they're ever doing something that seems, you know, cruel or illogical, or they're doing something that is deemed wrong, and you can't figure out why they're doing the thing that you're telling them is a bad thing to do, or why they're doing something that everyone is saying, we don't want you doing this, it's because kids have needs, and they're not grown people yet, and even then grown people can be bad at this too, but they learn ways of dealing with the world, and they don't necessarily need to care about, you know, whether something is good or bad, or whether something is whether something is moral or immoral, you know, the ethics of something. They just learn from that sort of subconscious trial and error, like, oh, this worked to get this thing that I need. And so this is the sort of action, this is the sort of thought process, this is the way of dealing with the world that is going to be upregulated through just, I input, I get the right output. okay, more of this input means more of this output, right? That's a very simplified way of looking at it, but like, that's how kids kind of work in a lot of ways. They don't make moral decisions all the time necessarily. It's based on learning how to get what they want.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, firstly, morality is a very high concept thing. You probably need a prefrontal cortex to do that. Kids don't really have that. It's not quite arrived yet, maybe 20 more years. And the other thing I'd say as well is that morality is also, to a certain extent, I think, probably quite a privileged position to take. Like in the sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs framework, like actualization is like right at the top. Like when you don't, if you have, you know, and not everyone who bullies is like, you know, entirely it's excusable because they've got loads of stuff going on in their whatever. Like some people bully because there's stuff going on in their personal lives. Some people bully for a variety of reasons.
And to be clear, that's not to say that it's excusable to bully if you've got things going on. It's just explainable. As in, there's an explanation for this. That's what the explanation is.
Yes.
You know. Yeah. Go on.
And so like, you know, so the combination of the fact that, like you say, that's a child, they don't necessarily think about their own actions yet and like reflect upon them yet. And then secondly, it's quite a privileged thing to actually spend like time, mental energy, thought, all those things sort of self-reflecting, because if you're just dealing with the day-to-day struggles of your existence, you've not really got time for that. Like that's sort of on the hierarchy of needs a little bit further down the train. I'm going to sort out like the fact that this bad thing's happening to me at home, or this bad thing's happening to me with a friend or something like that. Yeah,
and as well, bad thing doesn't need to continue to happen to you at home. Do you know, I mean, like what I said there, you know, from the age of about 2, if that sort of aggression isn't, I guess, you know, corrected properly, or isn't, you know, you don't teach a child to deal with aggression or anger or whatever properly around 2 years of age. Apparently, you don't then have those internal control mechanisms. Yeah. And that's a really interesting thing, I think, that we don't necessarily consider when we're looking at raising children, right? So when we talk about different types of parenting, you know, we've got, say, authoritarian parenting, or authoritative parenting, I think it might be.
Sure.
And you've got gentle parenting and different kinds of parenting, right? When you've got, you know, one kind of parenting that's kind of like, you do what I say, or I hurt you, and you learn to respect me or fear me, and that means that you stay in line. That kind of parenting doesn't necessarily give a child internal regulation systems, like internal ability to regulate themselves, which is really, really important, right? That's what kind of, I would say, is the main separation between a child and an adult. Maturity to me is an ability to regulate oneself internally. So if a child, for example, were to go to a shop and they were expecting to get their favorite sweet and their favorite sweet wasn't there, you could expect a child to maybe throw a tantrum or to cry loudly in the middle of the shop, or any kind of, you know, very, very big reaction to this minor inconvenience. Now, don't get me wrong, like, I genuinely get upset. Like, really, it messes with my mood if I've, say, ordered something from, let's say I'm on delivery. This happened last night. I've ordered something.
This happened last night when you ordered brown rice from Wagamama's.
Yeah, and that wasn't so bad because I had, like, you know, because they called up and they swapped the rice, and I was like, fine, whatever. But, you know, if I want something to eat and then I don't get that thing, that irritates me. It winds me up. I remember as a kid once, I literally cried because I like a steak pie. I like the soggy bit of the pastry, and I leave that until the end so that I can have the soggy bit once it's gotten good and soggy, because it's nice, right? Yeah. Once my uncle came past, after I'd finished everything, picked up the soggy bit and ate it. There was no steak pie left.
Oh my gosh.
And like the entire meal for me was irrelevant because the only reason I have that meal is to have that one bit. I literally just started crying, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like I was crying. I was a kid because I had all these feelings. The only thing I knew, like, I just cried. Now,
that's your Joker origin story.
Yeah, right. But like nowadays, I'm not going to cry at something like that. I will still feel like not good about it, but I'm able to regulate my own emotions and not necessarily externalize them in a way that is, you know, not necessarily helpful or healthy around others. And on top of that, it's not just limiting an external thing. It's not just cutting off, you know, the outcome of your emotions. It's also being able to internally be like, It's fine. Like self-soothing.
Corey, I'm going to say it.
What?
I'm going to say it.
Oh my God. Yeah, go on.
Transactional analysis.
Yeah. No,
I'm teasing this episode in every single time it comes up. It's so good. It's going to be a good episode. I love this stuff.
Ding-a-ling-ling, is that the ad bell?
Goodness me, yes it is. He better help us find out what he's ringing for.
Well, look, you've almost given it away because he's ringing for BetterHelp, who are sponsoring this episode of SCI GUYS.
Yes, I actually used BetterHelp. I did some therapy via BetterHelp. I had a really wonderful time, basically phone calling a guy and just chatting about my life. And he gave me homework as well, which I really loved. So I got to listen to a book about how I can fix myself.
Only you would say, I got homework as a positive. But yeah, no, I also tried out BetterHelp and I had a really good time with it. So BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, as you know, Luke.
I do know that, and it's 100% online, just like me.
With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues.
When you sign up, the first experience you get is you basically do a questionnaire, why are you here? What do you want from us?
Existential stuff? Is it an existential questionnaire, Luke?
Yes, it asks you what is time, and depending on your answer, it matches you up with the right therapist from their network of therapists. It doesn't ask you what is time, by the way.
And then you can talk to your therapist whenever you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, video call, phone call, whatever you want, whatever works for you. Not in person, though, because it's online.
100% online.
And it being 100% online, Luke, means that you can message your therapist anytime. 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I can name all of the times, but I won't.
No, please, some more times.
6 a.m., 9 p.m., 2:45. Luke, the times are endless.
Other than at the heat death of the universe.
Yeah, and you can schedule live sessions whenever it's convenient for you.
And crucially, if your therapist is not the right fit for you, if you're not vibing, then you can change it at any point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that happened to me, actually, because my first therapist was way too small. I could have sworn he could have fit in the palm of my hand.
Corey, I think they were just on your phone. But even if they are tiny, with BetterHelp, you can expect the same professionalism and quality that you get from an in-person therapist.
But with a therapist who's custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at a very affordable price.
So if you'd like to get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, you can do so at betterhelp.com/SciGuys.
That's 10% off if you head to betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com/SciGuys.
Should we get on with the podcast?
I think we shall.
Yeah, look, my point is that kids, a big difference between kids and adults is just the ability to regulate yourself internally. And so bullying is quite clearly a kind of inability to do that, right? Very obvious. And you can see that in adults as well. You've got an adult who feels a certain way or whatever, and so will then take it out on people that they're able to take it out on. That is fundamentally the same as a child bullying. And you'd think it'd be really weird and different. An adult must be, a genuinely a sociopathic person or horrible to, not that those two things are, not that being sociopathic makes you horrible, but one of these
effects can be horrible.
That an adult must be one of these things to be a bully. But realistically, an adult just needs to not be able to regulate themselves emotionally.
Just a baby.
Well. Yeah.
Like the Deputy Prime Minister.
Exactly. So that's... exactly, yeah. So that is sort of the why people bully. Do you know maybe anything about how bullies pick targets?
Ooh, that's very interesting. Well, I was picked, so there must be something about me. They must go for gingers. Oh, it's maybe they if somebody has something that makes them stand out and makes them different in some way, like being a little ginger. Or in your case, being the only mixed race kid in your class, weren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, more or less. Well, the thing is for me that's not what I got it for. I got it. They called me a shortening of the word Pakistan or Pakistani. They shortened that down to a much shorter word.
Yes.
And the most irritating thing about that is that it's not the right slur. I get it. I'm different, blah, blah, blah. But be racist in the right way, at least, right?
You're such a nerd.
Well,
this is
annoying.
Like a scene in Young Sheldon. If you're going to bully me, at least get it right.
Well, if you're going to hate me for this, I'm not this. So can you not hate me, please?
Yeah.
And then we can have a conversation about why you shouldn't hate
that thing. Yeah.
but first, let's get to me not being bullied.
Yeah.
No, but So I mean, the thing with bullying, the thing with sort of how they find targets and whatnot, it kind of comes down to this really interesting thing where I think from 7-year-olds will kind of indiscriminately bully, if that makes sense. So they won't necessarily target people specifically. It says here up to about age 7, bullies will pick on almost anyone, right? And then after that, they start singling kids out. And it's sort of a trial and error process, I guess. Essentially finding out who gives things like sort of the biggest reaction and who fights back the least. Like when I say biggest reaction, sort of who gets like upset, who gets that, who gives you like that sort of visible on their face, like, yeah, okay, I'm getting the output that I wanted from this input that I'm giving them, right? And so if you're visibly upset, if you're less likely to be able to sort of fight back. So there's like, more socially isolated. You've got like sort of lower than you in sort of terms of a power dynamic. Then they're more likely to choose that person as a victim, right? So it's really interesting. So from 7 and up is when bullies start being specific, and it says here it's a sort of shopping process, which trial and error.
Yeah,
hitting out who is it that's gonna be the one that you choose.
I suppose it depends as well on your like what the goal of your bullying is. So for example, if you're in a friendship group, if you've got a bunch of friends and you're picking on someone to make everyone else laugh, then you're going to pick whoever everyone's going to laugh at most, or whoever's response makes everyone laugh more, or whoever has like the not as many social connections or whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And that was actually a thing with me and my friend group, and I don't know how common this was amongst friend groups, but in our group, and we're still friends now. I would say reconnected, but it's not even reconnecting. We've just gone to different places for uni, but we've kind of kept in touch every now and then. These 3 other guys that I've known since I was maybe about 7 at the youngest, and then 10 is when I met sort of all of them, and we've all been friends since we were about 11. So it's a good almost decade and a half now. And when we were in school, there would be one of us usually that was what I would call the butt monkey. Just the butt of the jokes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be the butt monkey.
No.
You will make sure that someone else is the butt monkey if it looks like you're going to be the butt monkey. And ultimately, it's the person who is least able to make a comeback, who it's easiest to make a joke about, and and who is probably less likely to just leave. I mean, if they're being treated like less well.
This is so funny. I didn't have any friendships like this at all. I didn't have any friendships where we like made fun of each other. It's so interesting. I had just like my little nerd friendships. Me and my friend Michael and Patrick. We were just like such little nerds.
We were nerds too.
Well, why? Yeah, but you were doing cool kid things like making jokes about each other.
Yeah, but we were it was more like edgy Reddit. That we were kind of like, some of us kind of like that. So we were nerds, but it was like toxic teenage boy friendships. And I don't know how else to describe it. It was toxic teenage boy friendships, and it's really interesting that the adults that we've become, we're all talking now about each other, and we'll still make jokes about each other, but it's always in good fun, and it's always like there came a point where we started growing up where we realized there is a limit, and you need to vocally say that we're sort of reaching a limit, and you need to be conscious of reaching a limit, because if you cross that line, that's a bad thing. We don't want to hurt each other, So it's interesting how that sort of transitioned as we got older, from being like scapegoating someone so that it's not me, and we were all doing it to each other. We were all responsible for it. To a more sort of like, hey, we're just friends, and we do genuinely care about each other's well-being, and we are also now aware of the effect that having a butt monkey can have, on someone's psyche. So what I want to get across here as well is that bullies might not even necessarily know that they're bullying someone, because yes, they can know that they're saying something and getting a reaction, but you could also very much envisage someone in their own head not considering what they're doing as being all that bad. They're just doing a thing and getting a reaction, especially if they've been taught at home that treating someone in this way is fine. Because again, you can tell a child something is right and wrong, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to understand internally that, genuinely believe doing this thing bad, doing this thing good.
And they might have a totally different concept of themselves and you as well, like where you see a power dynamic, they might see a power dynamic in the opposite direction. They might think they're punching up in some specific way.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. And when we were talking sort of about how bullies choose victims there, right? So I kind of want to maybe talk a little bit about what makes a good victim. What do you think would make, if we were bullies and we were doing our little window shopping, what would we do to find a victim?
God. Well, you pick someone. Oh God, this is horrible.
I mean, I can say it if you want,
Well, they're going to give good responses. They're going to be actually upset by the things we're saying. I think we've covered that already. They're going to be in some way weak.
Yeah.
Like smaller than us, or like don't have any like big strong friends that'll back them up, or like that kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what else.
So what I'm kind of
definitely
looking
ginger.
Okay. What I'm talking about here is that being victimized, generally it's going to happen to someone who is more likely to not put up a fight. So if they give a reaction, they're more likely to cry or whatever, but they'll also not put up too much of a fight. So if a bully is trying to, take something from you, like, I want your phone. Give me your phone. Give me your watch. Give me your pencil case. I want your pencil case.
Is that bullying? That's just thieving.
Yeah, but it's
I suppose so,
it is.
yeah,
It's taking someone's stuff from school.
Right.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it is bullying. It's a way that bullies exert power over their victims.
True. Yeah.
And, phone and watch, that's maybe a bit much because these things have become very expensive and all of that sort of stuff. But,
I'll find it on Find My.
Pencil case and whatnot.
I'll report you to the police.
Yeah, but exactly. Like pencil cases and things like this. Like,
lunch money.
Yeah, give me this. If a kid is just going to do it and also is going to cry.
Yeah.
So they're not fighting back, and they're also giving you an emotional response that is making you feel better about yourself or making you feel good. That's going to be a good victim, right? So it literally says here that children who become victims offer no deterrent to aggression, which can make them disliked by even their non-bullying peers. So that's a really difficult position to be in, right? Where you're not fighting back, you're not being aggressive, right? But your social standing is just decreasing entirely, and there's not really much you can do about it. And I find this interesting, that this is what I found, especially because the advice that people get when they're being bullied is to just ignore them, pay no mind them.
Oh, I was told to kick him in the balls.
Yeah, I mean, I was taught if someone hits you, hit them back harder. But it's different when you're, if someone's a year above you in school, that's a big difference in size and age and stuff, it feels like, because as you're a kid, you grow quite quickly. But in school, they'll say they're not going to tell you to hit a child back. So they're going to be telling you, just ignore them. Speak to a trusted adult. But the trusted adult can't do anything if it's not on school property. And ignoring them isn't necessarily going to make it much easier. It's not like bullies are just going to get bored and go away if you're, not giving them, if you're like trying really hard to not let them bother you, because you need to make sure that you're fully ignoring them. You're not giving anything. Because if you look even the slightest bit upset, the bully's going to get something from that, right? Like expecting a child to be able to emotionally regulate to the point of a bully getting bored is just, I don't see it as being feasible.
I just don't understand why. What's the bully getting out of someone being upset? I don't get it. I remember I did some time talking to a psychiatrist once, or as a therapist or whatever, and I was talking about how I couldn't conceptualize of. I think I've talked to you about this before, like not being able to conceptualize of someone doing something out of malice. Like, I never infer malice on somebody's actions.
Almost to a fault as well.
Yeah, to a fault. That's why I was talking to a therapist about it, is that I never infer malice. Malice being like somebody does something that hurts someone else purely because it hurts somebody else, not to get something for themselves. Even they might get something for themselves, but that's sort of tangential. It's just to hurt someone. And I don't understand it. Like, and so I don't ever infer it on other people to the point where I just don't actually see it when it's happening. Yeah, which is stupid. But like, just what are they getting out of it? I don't understand.
What doing
weird.
something mean or cruel could make you feel better.
Why?
I'm not,
it would never make me feel better.
Look, I mean, for me, the sort of empathy, the moral part of my brain, it will outweigh that in most situations.
But what will outweigh it? That's what I don't get. What will outweigh it?
No, as in, so you've got two sort of opposing things here that are competing with each other. You've got hurting someone else and that making you feel better because, wait, listen, so if you make someone else smaller, that can make you feel bigger, sort of thing. That's just one example, right? Or if you feel like someone, for punishment. You feel like someone has done something bad, they deserve to be punished. Like, really, you're not getting anything out of harming them other than you feel like it's good and right to hurt them.
Right.
So we can understand to some degree that people can get pleasure out of someone else being hurt under the right circumstances, right? If in their head they've got the right context for it. So it's not a huge leap to say, oh, well, yeah, making someone feel small to make yourself feel big can make you feel better about yourself. And with most people, you know, if they were to do that, they'd probably feel kind of bad because, hey, that's another person that I've made feel bad. Now I feel bad too, so I'm not going to do that. But there's enough people that don't mind doing something mean to hurt someone else because it makes them feel better and they're able to explain it away to themselves.
I feel like I just overthink it in terms of like making someone else feel small in order to make myself feel big. It doesn't make me feel big.
No.
It doesn't. It's just like I haven't got any bigger.
Yeah.
And there's loads of people. So even if I've pushed them down the hierarchy one rung, like, well, there's flipping millions of people. So I've not really got anywhere. I just think about it like that. And then I just wouldn't make me feel good. I'd just be like, oh.
Yeah, but you don't think about things the same way that most other people do you? Like,
apparently not.
Realistically
all
speaking.
These other people are going around going, yeah, I love it when I get people feel sad.
Well, the thing about bullies as well is that they can be quite paranoid, right? Apparently that they're not necessarily able to understand the intentions or sort of the vibes of others, let's say. So neutral situations can appear hostile. They can be disliked by people, but think of themselves as being quite liked. There's
it's like anxiety.
Yeah. And I mean, this is what I'm saying. It's kind of like a maladaptive coping mechanism in some ways, right? And, you know, obviously girls can be bullies too. Girls tend to be less physically aggressive. I genuinely am scared of how girls bully because, and this is, you know, stereotypical and like, you know, and gender stereotypes, obviously, like men are capable of this as much as women are, but the way that young girls can treat each other sometimes is horrifying. With guys, I can get beat up and called gay and slurs and all of that.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I'm sorry for doing that.
But like that is less scary to me than the psychological damage that with just words that I've seen some girls be able to to the effect that they've been able to have on others. And again, this is not about them being girls. This is just about the way that we kind of teach boys to be and teach girls to be. We teach boys to be more aggressive. So it makes sense that in bullying, that's going to be the thing. Yes, girls can be aggressive in bullying too, like physically speaking, but it's damaging and manipulating relationships. It's like scary. It's like, you know, I saw the book that Mean Girls is based on is a book essentially for parents about how teenage girls are going to be in school and how, you know, the social hierarchies work and all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, seeing a sort of video essay on that, it was really, really interesting because understanding the way that girls interact with each other just because of the way they're socialized, it can be really, really scary because while boys focus more on sort of isolation and physical sort of abuse, it seems to me rather that sort of girls focus more on the emotional, psychological stuff where it's about relationships more so than it's about physically hurting each other. And that's scary.
Out of interest, you said something there twice, which I picked up on, which I found interesting. Is that a socialization thing?
I'm saying it's likely to be more of a socialization thing. What I'm trying to get across here is that I'm not saying that inherently women are psychological manipulators and men are big, strong brutes. I'm saying in all likelihood, it's probably more an issue of socialization rather than an issue of just inherently this is what boys are like and this is what girls are like.
Yeah, no,
especially sort of pre-puberty.
All I would say on that is that ultimately the two sort of what seem like two very different things of like physical aggression, they're ultimately all just aggression, like the want to change somebody's power status or whatever, coming out in different strategies. And I just wondered whether there is any suggestion or any study or anything that talks about whether that is the strategy that is like used by women or by girls versus the strategy used by men or boys is mostly socialization, mostly hereditary, born, or a combination of the two.
No, I'm not really sure. Do you know what we could do? We should probably do an episode just on socialization of boys and girls because I think it's a really interesting topic that kind of comes up a lot. And yeah, I'm not really sure, but maybe we could do an episode on it in future. So that's kind of what bullies are, why they target people, you know, sort of what kind of people they choose. But we've not spoken yet about the effect of bullying, right? So I saw a study that found that, you know, well, obviously, right, bullying, the effects of bullying on the bullied, bad. Okay, it can cause long-term health implications, psychological and physical, because, you know, psychological stress can manifest somatically. It can manifest into physical problems within your body. Sleep disturbances, which, you know, lack of sleep can have other knock-on effects, all of these sort of things, but also inflammation, right? So I found this study and this article talking about this study saying that apparently a specific indicator of illness called C-reactive protein is higher in normal than bullying victims even when they get older. But bullies seem to be healthier. Looking at that sort of if you look at that sort of metric there, and CRP is a quite common marker for inflammation, which is when the immune system is sort of overactive. It's sort of a sign of an overactive immune system. And that's present in chronic illness, like diabetes, chronic pain, cardiovascular disease, but also depression apparently as well. So now, if you look at that, you can see that, and they looked at over 1,400 kids, that if you look at that, the fact that bullying can have long-term, as in way past when the kid is actually bullied, effects, it is a major problem that we really should be trying to focus on as almost a health epidemic, because if we look at, where bullying comes from as in sort of this maladaptive behavior that then propagates in such a way that it affects others for their entire life potentially, that is a much more serious problem than it may appear on the face of it, which is a kid pushing another kid. So yeah, if you think of bullying as just it's just building character, it's just kids being kids. Nah, dude, nah, that's traumatic. That's gonna have long-term effects. You might not even necessarily be fully aware of them. Not the most obvious thing of this is a depressed person, this is an anxious person, this person has PTSD or trauma. It could, there are underlying things that you wouldn't necessarily tie back directly to being bullied.
A weird one I noticed in myself, maybe about 5-10 years ago, was that I realized there was like a little portion of my brain that was constantly watching myself and like paying attention to me and saying mean things about me that I would then say out loud before anyone could say about me.
Oh.
And I was completely unconscious of that, of like it happening or why I was doing it. And it absolutely blew my mind, realizing that was essentially a maladaptive coping strategy of like, oh, if I say these things first, then other people can't say them. And that is so weird.
It's really weird. Yeah. I don't think people that haven't been bullied can really consider how deeply effective bullying can be. It's something that sticks with you. Not necessarily like, oh, I'm thinking every day about how I was bullied as a child, but definitely the way that I go about my life for the majority of my life was influenced in some way by being bullied in school. By how I learned to interact with the world based on the circumstances that I was put into. I remember the names that I was called as a kid. And this was almost 20 years ago. And I still remember what I was called. I still remember the bully circle that I mentioned, where a bunch of high schoolers shoved around a 7 or 8 year old for fun. I remember these things.
God, those guys are such losers.
Isn't right? It's mad. And I look back on it now, and there was a point I think where I thought, yeah, being bullied. This made me stronger. I wouldn't be who I was today without this. But also,
that is true. You wouldn't be who you are today.
I wouldn't, but
you might be better though.
Probably.
I had exactly the same thing as you. I'm sure we'll get into this in After Dark, but I made a video called "Why I Want My Kids to Get Bullied." Did not go down well. Some of the criticisms were, I think, just sort of misunderstanding. I wasn't clear enough, and whatever. But some of it was like, I did not realize quite how much this had affected me.
Yeah.
And so I thought, basically, I broke the world into 2 categories: people who get bullied and people who are bullies.
Which isn't even the case, because there are bullies who are themselves bullied.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a very known thing.
Yeah. It was a silly thing. I think 17 when I made the video. Idiot. Anyway, and basically I said, I'd rather my kids be bullied than be a bully. That's all I said. That's all I meant to say anyway. But I sort of waffled on for about 5 minutes. But actually, what you just said about these health things, turns out bullies are healthier. So maybe I'll make a new video called I Want My Kids to Be Bullies.
Yeah, but realistically speaking, like, yes, in that one metric, bullies are healthier, but only by virtue of the fact that they weren't themselves being bullied necessarily. And also, they're not healthier in that they don't have that internal emotional regulation. And it's so interesting because I don't think we necessarily think about the psychology of bullying. You know, we don't think about it necessarily in the correct way. We look at it as an individual thing rather than, you know, a result of the conditions that a child was put into. You know, we think of it as if you put enough posters up about don't bully, stop bullying, that'll stop bullying. But it won't. The only way to stop bullying is to stop it at the root cause, which is not kids just choosing to bully because it's fun. There are things that children are lacking, and to try and get those things, bullying becomes their tactic. Not through necessarily a conscious choice, but because children will do whatever it is that gets them that thing. That's how maladaptive behaviors form. Do you think that someone necessarily has OCD because they thought, I know how to stop my family from dying. I'll decide to tap the table 3 times every single time I say the letter S, and that'll be it. No, their brain, something's going on in their brain where, you know, where that is how they have that's kind of what they've built up to deal with the sort of stress and the emotions that are coming, you know, from OCD. Is there's stress, anxiety, all of these sorts of things, and then there's the sort of regulation of it. You've got the intrusive thoughts, and then to regulate yourself to not feel as bad or whatever about the intrusive thoughts. Very big oversimplification of OCD. Go and watch our OCD episode. But to kind of pull yourself back from the badness of those intrusive thoughts, there's these other coping mechanisms. And you wouldn't say, as I said, you wouldn't say to someone with OCD, oh, why did you choose to have that?
Why did you do this deliberately?
Why did you choose to have that? What? I didn't.
Just stop tapping the table every time you say the letter S.
Exactly. And like anxiety. Silly. Anxiety, like panic attacks, you know, these are like having anxiety, right? If you are constantly worried about things, and that comes as a result of, you know, having bad things happen to you, and therefore trying to, you know, on some level constantly be ahead of the next bad thing so that it doesn't happen, but you do that to the point of where you are already, like, you're making yourself worse off just in the long run anyway. That's not a choice that you've made as a mechanism of coping with that. That is something that you've just kind of like learned to do, and it's really hard to get out of that because you're not in control of your own mind. Unfortunately, you have some control, but you're not just very easily in control of it. You can't just think, this depression business, it's not really doing it for me. You know, I would say that bullying, it's not necessarily a mental illness in the same way as depression or these sorts of things, but it isn't. It does exhibit something similar in that it's a maladaptive coping mechanism almost, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, sure, there could be any number of reasons that someone could become a bully, but ultimately, at its core, it is the same thing as just a kid needs something, and this is how they're getting that thing. So yeah, like the way that we deal with bullying, I don't think it's the best way forward, you know?
Do you have a section there in your old notes there, Corey, on how we can make bullying better, treatments and cures for the affliction of bullying? Or being a bully?
I do.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so this is a report from 2021 from the Early Intervention Foundation. They're essentially a charity that was established in 2013. And they do what they say on the tin. Early intervention to stop children from having poor outcomes, right? So basically vulnerable kids, you stop them from having a bad life later on, right? By getting in there early and fixing the problems.
That sounds good.
That's common. Why isn't the government? That's just what we should...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Fine. Or we could just wait till they do a bad thing and chuck them all in a building and make them do work for no money.
Or make them deputy prime minister. Sorry.
Whoa. That's only if their parents are rich as all hell and send them to the school.
Yes.
That's just the pipeline to the Prime Minister.
I don't think we even have to fact check that. I think that's probably true.
That's literally true, yeah. We've got two different kinds of pipelines here. You got the Prime Minister, the governmental pipeline, where if you're very rich, you got the right connections, you get sent to that school, and then you go to another school, and then you do lots and lots and lots of drugs and cocaine, and then you become a government person, and you persecute other people for doing what you do.
Yeah.
And there's the other pipeline, which is you take a kid, you put them in a different school, and then you just wait for them to eventually break the law due to poverty or the bad upbringings, all of that sort of stuff, and then you put them in prison and make them work.
Go watch our prisons episode of SCI Guys.
Yeah, kind of the best ways to deal with bullying, in the moment, is to have a support system, is to not stay quiet about it. Like, if you're being bullied, tell someone. And if that someone doesn't do something about it, tell someone else. Just keep telling people until something is done. And the difficulty there is that, these solutions to being bullied in the moment just are really difficult, because staying neutral, it's a difficult thing to do. As in not showing those emotions, it's a difficult thing to do. Having a support system is not something you can just choose to do, especially as a child where you don't have that many decisions about yourself and your life. Telling an adult, it's a really scary, difficult thing as a child. And also, if the adult doesn't do anything, then you're kind of learning that, hey, maybe telling an adult isn't the best way forward. And also, if you tell an adult, that can put you in greater danger as well. There's, especially as a child, it's really difficult to understand that an adult can intervene such that this other kid is not going to be able to harm you in any way. But also, telling an adult could still end up in you being harmed by that child. There's not an easy way forward. But, I'm not sure how much data there is on, exactly how to stop bullying. But from what I've been reading, it seems that ultimately, because bullying is an issue of, children being, let's say, made into bullies, as in it being a developmental thing rather than an innate thing, realistically, it's just kind of squaring out those outcomes, right? Stopping children from not having an ability to regulate their emotions by supporting parents more. If people aren't in poverty, then they're more likely to be able to have more of a focus on their kids. If they've got a better education on child rearing, they're probably going to be more effective parents. Essentially, just even out inequality, and you're likely to solve quite a bit of bullying, right? And then you've got people who bully because they perceive themselves to be lower, or they want to keep themselves on top. And ultimately, just I reckon therapy, right? If bullying is this sort of maladaptive coping mechanism that we've kind of been discussing it as, then just getting in and fixing that sort of coping mechanism is probably the best way forward, right?
I think as well, when you said about leveling society, I think things like you talked about 2-year-olds needing to be taught fair play, essentially. And there's all these sort of underlying rules of our society that we learn through play and through making mistakes and through an adult coming in and correcting them. And if you, for example, if your family can't afford things like a creche or things like group play, where you go to supervised play sessions with other kids at an early age in those sort of super important fundamental years where you learn the basic rules of how to be a person and how to interact with other people. If you have a parent who you're at home an awful lot, you have a parent who either can't work, or one parent works and another one stays at home, but you don't interact with a lot of kids because it's just you and the parent. You might not get sort of exposure to making those mistakes that can be corrected by a parent before it is, or a creche worker, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's any number of you're so spot on, because there's any number of things that could result in that sort of outcome, right? Whether it's a sort of relationship with a parent where you don't feel like you're getting enough attention, or you're actually not getting enough attention, or they're making you feel small, or you're just modeling their behavior because they're mean to you, or they're mean to others around them.
Yeah.
Or even worse, perhaps, throughout the course of your life, that kind of behavior of belittling others has been beneficial to you. And so that's what you've internalized that as your way of going about things. Mm-hmm. It's so multifaceted and complex. And yes, there are underlying sort of let's say, psychological profiles of bullies, right? There are underlying sort of similarities, but the exact circumstances are not necessarily 100% consistent, right? Like if Priti Patel can be a bully, and also some poor kids
allegedly,
then some poor kids.
Sorry, I've been ragging on the Deputy Prime Minister this whole time. So allegedly, all those things in the past.
I said if Priti Patel can be a bully,
very good.
If Priti Patel could be a bully, and also some poor kid from God knows where could be a bully as well. Like, those are quite different circumstances there, right? So the exact specific circumstances don't necessarily need to be the same. I think what's quite clear here is that a bully is lacking something. And they, for some reason or another, have learned that the way to get their needs met, is to have this behavior. Mm-hmm. And they take it out on others, and then there's a long-term impact on the victims. And, it's really, really difficult, but that's all we've really got time for today. We're going to discuss this a little bit further in the After Dark that we're doing on this topic. So if you want to listen to After Dark, as I said, get to patreon.com/SCI Guys, sign up. We're doing 2 After Dark episodes a month now, which is insane. So go ahead and join that. But that is pretty much it. There's just one more thing to do.
Dun, 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 dun.
It's the Quickfire Quiz.
Bullying edition.
So the rules for the Quickfire Quiz are the same as always. I will ask one question. That's one question between you and the audience. If you get the answer before Luke, then you win. What do you win, Luke?
I will bully you, personally.
Oh boy. Oh, dearie me.
If you leave a comment, I might come and just bully you in the comments.
Okay, so please don't.
Let me know if you get the answer before me, and I'll come and bully you.
Please throw this.
Very polite bullying.
So the question is, what is the legal definition of bullying in the UK?
But there isn't one.
Yes, well done. A little trick question, because this is the bullying episode, so I thought I'd be a little bit of a bully here and target you. I usually do. But that's all we have time for today. But before we go, we'd like to thank all of our patrons with an extra special thank you to executive producers Danito and Glitch Rabbit, and thank you for watching. You can find the full references for the episode down in the description. Subscribe to new episodes every Sunday, and why not leave us a nice week comment? You can support the pod at patreon.com/SciGuys, or you can find contact us at SciGuys on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and at SciGuys on TikTok too. Or you can send us an email at sciguyspod@gmail.com.
That's sciguyspod@gmail.com. Sciguyspod
at gmail.com. You can follow me at NotCore everywhere.
You can't follow me because I hate you and you're a puny little weakling, and go away.
Goodbye.